The game begins with a terrorist attack at a military base where a group of students, with the help of their teacher, is doing their best to get hold of the situation. Soon everyone realizes that the real goal of the attackers were the huge rail cannons they want to use to assassinate the Chancellor. The group tries everything to reach the cannons in time, but fails, and right after a shot goes off, the game cuts back to the beginning of the school year at Thor's military academy, where the protagonist Reen Schwarzer arrives in Trista, and after exploring the surroundings and talking to some students, you will attend the opening ceremony. After Principal Van Dyke's speech, the students leave to their classrooms, with the only exception being the students in red uniforms. This is where you meet instructor Sarah Wallerstein, who explains the experimental state of the newly formed Class 7. Following her short explanation, she asks her proteges to take part in a first training exercise in the old schoolhouse, where Reen and his new classmates learn about the fact that, different to the common classes, Class 7 contains of students from all social status, combining nobles with quote-unquote commoners. After stopping a dispute between the noble Juices and the commoner Machias, Sarah begins the students' first exercise by opening a trapdoor, dropping them into a dungeon. Then, following a short orientation phase, the students begin exploring the basement in two groups to find the exit. Right before leaving the dungeon, Reen's group is being attacked by a moving statue, which they really struggle with until the rest of Class 7 joins the fight, and they eventually overcome the first boss fight in the game. While still catching their breath, instructor Sarah breaks the celebrations by congratulating her students that they successfully learned the concept of combat linking, which also concludes the end of the prologue. The actual first chapter of the game also includes the very first of many field studies, where the class, split into two varying groups, will travel around the country to earn practical experience. Reen's group's first destination was a smaller town called Celtic, that is famous for its grain market. Everything seemed to go as planned, they fulfilled their tasks and even started bonding a little bit, until two market stalls were destroyed overnight, causing a confrontation between the salesmen. Hearing of that, the group decides to look for the culprits, but right when the students were about to take the bandits as prisoners, they found themselves surrounded by the provincial army, who was allied with the bandits from the beginning. Luckily, right before anything too dangerous could happen, Captain Claire from the Railway Military Police made her introduction and arrested the criminals, saving Reen's group from any harm. On their way home, Reen confessed that he is the adopted son of a low-ranking noble himself, which, to his surprise, didn't result in any negative reactions by his fellow classmates. In contrast to that, Chapter 2 begins with Reen learning more about the other students, like the fact that Emma looks after a black cat called Celine, but also Maki is making clear that Reen is not on his good side any longer, now that he knows about his nobility. Now, with a few less eventful days behind them, Group A, with a few new faces, heads towards Barhead, Juice's hometown. This time, however, the atmosphere was on a downward spiral, with tensions between the students and especially between Machias and Juices beginning to rise, ultimately resulting in Reen getting injured during battle while fulfilling one of their tasks. At least further that day, things seemed to change for the better, when Machias overheard Juices and Reen talking about their personal struggles, and decides to take a step towards a more peaceful group dynamic the following day. However, when the group returned from their field study task later that day, Machias gets arrested and the group needs to come up with a plan to return their comrade to freedom. They decide to go through the sewers, and with Machias out of his cell, the plan seems to turn out to be successful. But right before the escape, the students find themselves surrounded again, and even after overcoming two dog-like beasts, there was no real hope to escape the situation, until instructor Sarah, accompanied by Juice's elder brother Rufus, showed up and saved her proteges from being arrested. This time, because of the group starting to realize the dimension of how terrible the situation is in their country, the train ride home suffered from a much more depressing mood. The third chapter begins with some introductions, first to the rainy season, second to the newly assigned mate of Class 7 Sharon, and last but not least to Elisa's family, the Reinford family, being the owners of one of the biggest manufacturers of military equipment. After the events of their last field study, Class 7 was actually up for some good news for a change, because they managed to achieve the highest score of all classes in their year. So with a bit of fresh motivation in their bags, the again newly formed groups prepare for their next field studies. With Reen's group, this time traveling to the North Highlands, that Gaius' call his home. After a very long train ride, the militaries in training arrive at the settlement, which was when this game actually positively surprised me for the first time. Because I never expected it to include such a vast semi-open world to explore just for one chapter, which gets even better the moment you get your horse. But sadly, the relaxation doesn't last very long, because even out here, far from big cities, A group of terrorists decides to reference the refrain of Persona 3 Reload's battle theme by disturbing the peace and launching an artillery attack at a military outpost, trying to make it look like the attack of another nation with the goal of triggering a conflict. Hearing of that, Reen's team decides to investigate by themselves, and with the help of a mysterious girl called Millium and a silver puppet, the real culprits can be captured quite fast. And even though the leader of the group, called Gideon, manages to escape thanks to Class 7 and the Intelligence Division, war was prevented. In July, the month Chapter 4 takes place in, we learn that Reen possesses a mysterious power he tried to suppress all the time when his sister Elise was in danger at one of the floors of the dungeons beneath the old schoolhouse. But thanks to the help of Crow and upperclassmen, Reen regained control and no one suffered any harm. Shortly after the incident, the time for this month's field study has come, and this time both groups were sent to the same location, the capital city of Erebonia. Again, at first everything seems calm. You get some background info for some characters, you meet the prince and the princess, and you partake in the scavenger hunt. Even when they were tasked with patrolling the sceneries, everything for once seemed to actually go as planned. Until again, the terrorists started causing trouble around town to distract the guards from their actual goal. A tea party consisting of several nobles and politicians, including Makia's father, Reen's sister and the princess. With Elise and Princess Alphen in the hands of the terrorists, Reen and his classmates decide to chase after the kidnappers. After overcoming a bone dragon that was summoned by Gideon, they are faced by the rest of the main group of terrorists, including their leader C, who challenges Reen, Laura and Fiend to a duel, where the three quickly learn that they are no match for him. With the military police almost having arrived at the scene, the group takes their leave, right after announcing their name being the Imperial Liberation Front. Following the reunion with the two girls, the group takes their leave, but before being met by several people like the princess, the prince and the chancellor himself. And on a side note, this chapter was the first that actually annoyed me with its pacing, and the final scene is probably the best example for that. You have a group of like 8 people and almost everyone has to react to everything that happens. Like the prince arrives and everyone reacts like, no way, is that the prince? It can't be. That felt so ridiculous, it instantly reminded me of the Bollywood drama meme from a few years ago. Anyway, moving on to the 5th chapter, where Class 7 is introduced to 2 new members that are actually familiar faces. The now former upperclassman Crow and the blue-haired girl Milliam. Shortly after that, the students again, divided into newly arranged groups, head towards their destinations for the next field study. Reen's group this time is sent to visit Laura's hometown, a beautiful small village built close to water with a magnificent view over a castle up on a hill in the distance. The castle also plays a bigger role as the group has to defeat supernatural beings in there to rescue 2 kids that got trapped inside. This is also the moment the group learns about Emma's knowledge about the occult. Further, during their stay, Laura's father, who is known as a master in sword combat, challenges Reen to a fight to bring him to the edge and use his hidden powers. Through that, Reen learns to accept himself for who he is instead of being scared of his powers. After leaving the town again, they meet up with the other half of their class to travel to the military base from the beginning, where they are supposed to get to watch some military training up close. But the events of the prologue unfold and we get to know that the shot that was heard came from a blank cartridge. And the students, together with instructor Sarah and instructor Neidhart, have a little more time until the ray cannons are able to shoot again. After defeating 2 of the higher ranking members of the Liberation Front and saving the Chancellor, the students and their teachers witness the terrorists taking off in an airship, which marks the end of chapter 5. The following chapter begins with the board of directors voting for a continuation of the experiment Class 7 embodies. Further, the preparations for the upcoming school festival begin, and Reen and his classmates decide that they want to perform a concert. But before that, it is again time for the next field study, which this time starts in a quite unusual manner. Because instead of going by train as usual, at the morning of their departure the students are being ordered to the school training field, where they are picked up by Prince Oliver's private airship, who decided to give Class 7 a personal ride to their next destination. After arriving in Ruhr, a very technical advanced city and home to the Reinford family, Alisa guides her classmates to her family's home where they were to stay for the next days. While also veering over another conflict between the provincial army and the railway military police, the main event of this chapter again happened to be another terrorist attack. This time, the Liberation Front occupied the local mine and took the miners as hostages. The group, with the help of their schoolmate Angelica, who once worked at the mine herself, decides to take matters into their own hands again and sneak in from behind, and after guiding the hostages to safety and defeating Vulcan, they are once again up against C. But this time Class 7 is able to force C to flee, once again in his airship. But before he could take off, a gunshot is fired right at the engine and the aircraft is crashing back into the mine. After arriving back at the academy, the class immediately begins their intense practice sessions for their concert, under the guidance of Elliot and Crow. When the festival finally came, Reen spent the first day helping the student council and visiting the attractions with his classmates. When the students were discussing the final steps at the end of the day, the sound of a bell coming from the old schoolhouse filled the night sky. Arriving at the source, they notice a barrier surrounding the building. With their festival in danger, they decide to go inside to find the reason behind the occurrence. Inside, they are transported to another dimension and challenged by a dark shadow. After a tough fight, the group is able to defeat the being and is transported back to the old schoolhouse, where now a huge dark armor appeared. Because the group once again was able to avert another crisis, the festival was able to continue and Class 7 could perform their music act in the evening. The following afterparty found a quick end when the principal announced that Guerrilla Fortress was wiped out by an attack of Crossbill State, and the Chancellor would speak to his citizens soon. During his speech the entire country was listening to, a gunshot is heard killing the Chancellor before he was able to make his declaration of war. The shooter is soon revealed to be C, and not only that, we finally get to know that behind the mask is Crow Armrest, and the downward spiral isn't even close to be done, because soon after, a huge silver airship arrives in the capital, dropping off huge metal suits of armor called Panzersoldaten, that quickly defeat the local army and take over the city. But the people of Thor's Academy have next to no time to process anything that just happened, because a group of Panzersoldaten was soon to arrive in Trista as well, and the teachers and students had to go face to face with the machines that took their country's capital in no time. After a tough battle, the group around Reen was actually able to defeat one of the suits by aiming at its joints, but soon found their master in an even stronger version of the Panzersoldat. Right before the party could be wiped out, the power slumbering inside Reen reacted with the black armor suit inside the old schoolhouse basement. The suit came to their aid and is introduced as one of the legendary Divine Knights, the Ashen Knight. With Reen steering the Divine Knight, the Panzersoldat was quickly defeated, but before they even had the chance to cheer, Crow arrived from the sky controlling a Divine Knight himself. After an intense battle where Reen tries to make Crow come to his senses, the Ashen Knight is defeated, but right before Crow could finish him off, Reen's classmates stepped in his way, and the Ashen Knight automatically takes off to the sky. Reen screams that his friends need him and he wants to stay, and the game ends right here.